Nora Callahan was staring at the tiny sprig of decorative rosemary floating in her sparkling water, like it personally offended her, and silently calculating how many minutes remained before she could reasonably fake a migraine. The answer was not enough. The restaurant was called Aurum, a name that managed to sound both pretentious and vaguely threatening. Nestled in the polished heart of downtown Seattle, where the appetizers cost $32, and the lighting was specifically engineered to make average-looking people feel beautiful, and beautiful people feel like gods. Nora was neither average nor trying to feel like a god. She was 31, senior financial analyst at Hargrove and Wolf Consulting, and she was currently sitting across from the single most insufferable human being she had ever encountered in 3 decades of living. His name was Bradley Fitch. Bradley was a regional director of something in pharmaceutical sales, a man whose eyes crinkled at the corners in a way that might have been charming if the words coming out of his mouth weren't so relentlessly terrible. He had a square jaw, aggressively whitened teeth, and the specific confidence of a man who had never once questioned whether he was the most interesting person in the room. He was not the most interesting person in the room. Nora was. Her best friend since college, Priya, had set this up. He's successful. He's tall. He's ready to commit, Priya had said over text, followed by 3 heart-eye emojis that Nora now deeply resented. Just one dinner. What's the worst that could happen? This was the worst that could happen. Discipline is honestly just a muscle, Bradley was saying, pausing to dab the corner of his mouth with a linen napkin, even though he hadn't eaten anything yet. Like, once you train yourself to treat food as fuel rather than comfort, everything changes. Your energy, your body composition, your mental clarity. He said, body composition, the way other people said, world peace. Nora was a size 16. A fact. She had made peace with somewhere around her mid-20s after years of making war with it. She had thick, dark hair that she wore in loose waves past her shoulders, warm, brown skin, and a face that her mother described as expressive, and her ex-boyfriend had once called a lot to handle. She wore a deep emerald silk blouse, tucked into wide-leg black trousers, and she had spent 40 minutes on her makeup specifically to feel good about herself tonight. That feeling had lasted approximately 9 minutes into the date. I completely agree that nutrition matters, Nora said, keeping her voice measured. Professional. The same tone she used when delivering quarterly loss assessments to C-suite executives who didn't want to hear them. I also think that ordering a bowl of truffle pasta on a Friday night is a pretty normal human activity. Bradley's gaze drifted, just for a fraction of a second, to the dish the server had just placed in front of Nora. It was an unconscious look, fast and dismissive. But Nora caught it the way she caught discrepancies in financial reports immediately. Precisely. And with a tight surge of cold anger. Oh, for sure, Bradley said, with the particular warmth of a man who did not mean it at all. Totally. I just know I personally couldn't do it. My ex, she was a competitive cyclist. She used to say that your evening meal either works for you or against you, but everyone's on their own journey. Right, Nora set her fork down. She had spent the last 4 weeks wading through the most stressful financial audit of her career, a sprawling shell company called Meridian Coastal Partners that had surfaced during a routine compliance review. The numbers were wrong in ways that suggested they had been engineered to be wrong. Layers of obfuscation stacked beneath layers of misdirection. She had barely slept. She had skipped 2 weekends. She had eaten lunch at her desk for 26 consecutive days. She had come out tonight for a good meal and one pleasant conversation with another adult human being. "Excuse me," Nora said, folding her napkin neatly and placing it beside her plate. "I need to find the restroom." "Take your time," Bradley said, already tilting his phone face up on the table. "I'll get the check started. I've got an early morning. Anyway, my trainer books me at 6:15 on Saturdays." Nora stood, smoothed her trousers, picked up her small burgundy clutch, and walked away from the table with the calm, purposeful stride of a woman who had made a firm decision. She was not coming back. She typed quickly to Priya as she moved through the dining room. "Your guy just implied I should feel guilty for ordering pasta. I am leaving. We need to discuss the criteria you are using to screen these people." She didn't wait for a response. The front entrance was on the other side of the restaurant, which meant walking directly past table 14, where Bradley Fitch was already scrolling through something and radiating the smug relief of a man who'd also decided this wasn't working out. Nora would rather exit through the kitchen. She caught the eye of a young server carrying a tray of empty glasses near the corridor that led toward the back of the building. "Hey, I'm so sorry to bother you," Nora said quietly, stepping to the side with him. "Is there a back exit, a side door, anything that avoids the main entrance?" The server looked at her with the sympathetic recognition of someone who had witnessed many bad dates from the service side. "Yeah, go past the coat check. Take a left at the end of the hall. There's a fire exit that opens onto the private loading dock. Prop it with your foot, because it locks from the outside." Nora pressed a folded bill into his hand. "Thank you. Genuinely." She moved quickly. The ambient noise of the restaurant low jazz, the clink of glassware, the performance of expensive conversation fading behind her as the corridor narrowed. The walls were paneled in dark walnut, the carpet burgundy and thick underfoot. The hallway felt sealed from the rest of the building, like the inside of a safe. She turned left at the end. There was a door, heavy steel, painted black, with a crash bar handle. No sign except for a small placard that read, "Restricted." Nora hesitated for exactly 1 second, then pushed. The door swung inward with a heavy, pressurized exhale, and Nora Callahan stepped into the wrong room. She understood this immediately and completely. The way you understand, without needing to process the individual elements, that something has gone catastrophically wrong. The space was a private dining suite, large and deliberately invisible from the public areas of the restaurant. The curtains were drawn heavy and dark against the windows. The room smelled of cedar smoke, aged bourbon, and something sharper beneath it, copper and salt. The specific smell of violence. A man was zip-tied to a chair in the center of the room. He was well dressed in the remnants of what had been an expensive gray suit, one sleeve torn at the shoulder, his face a swollen, bloody topography of recent impact. Nora recognized him with a lurch of her stomach, not personally, but from headlines and news alerts. His name was Commissioner Dale Whitfield. He ran the Port Authority for Seattle's commercial shipping district. He'd been on local news 6 times in the past year, always smiling in a hard hat beside city officials. He was not smiling now. 2 men in dark tactical clothing stood on either side of him, wide-shouldered and expressionless. One of them turning to face Nora with the slow, deliberate calm of someone trained to respond to exactly this kind of interruption. But it was the man at the head of the table who stopped her breathing. He was seated, which somehow made him more threatening, rather than less, leaning back in a high-backed leather chair, with the absolute stillness of someone who had never needed urgency, because urgency always came to him. He held a glass of dark, amber liquor loosely in one hand. His jacket off. His charcoal vest, buttoned over a white shirt, with the sleeves folded precisely to the elbow. His forearms were mapped with old scars. His jaw was clean and angular. His eyes dark. Not the flat dark of cruelty, but the alert dark of calculation. He was looking at her like he'd been expecting her to arrive eventually. The two guards moved first. Nora heard the precise mechanical sound of weapons being drawn before she saw them. And then two guns were leveled at her chest, with the casual efficiency of people who did this regularly. Nora's clutch fell from her fingers. Her body went completely still, not with the stillness of calm, but with the paralyzed stillness of a system that had entirely overloaded. "Well," said the man at the head of the table. His voice was low, unhurried, carrying the specific weight of a man who charged the air in whatever room he occupied. "This is unexpected. Hold," he said to the guards, raising two fingers without looking at them. The guns lowered. Not holstered. Lowered. He stood. He was tall, not in the athletic, performative way of men like Bradley Fitch, but in the structural, inescapable way of something built rather than grown. He moved around the edge of the table with the quiet economy of motion that Nora associated with people who never wasted anything. He stopped 6 feet away from her. His eyes moved over her face, then took a slow, unhurried inventory of the rest of her, the emerald blouse, the curve of her waist, the way her hands had come up slightly in front of her body, in an instinctive, useless gesture of self-protection. His expression didn't register disgust, or dismissal, or the faintly pain tolerance she'd been receiving from Bradley Fitch all evening. It registered something else entirely, something that pulled the air out of the room. I was on a blind date," Nora heard herself say. Her voice came out surprisingly level, which she attributed entirely to shock. It was terrible. A server told me this was the back exit. I didn't see anything. I'm going to leave right now. She reached back for the door handle. His hand came up and hit the wall beside her head. Not aggressive. Not a threat, exactly. But absolute. Final. The sound of it was a single sharp note in the sealed quiet of the room. He leaned in. He smelled like cedarwood and cold evening air, and something older. Smokier. Underneath. A blind date. He said. Something moved. In his expression, not quite amusement, but adjacent to it. "Yes," Nora said. Her back was against the door. "Please." He studied her face for a long, compressing moment. "The name is Nora Callahan," he said. "Not a question." Her throat closed. "I've been looking for you," he said, his voice dropping to something quieter, more deliberate. "My name is Marcus Vane, and the work you've been doing inside Meridian Coastal Partners for the past month, the discrepancy you found that money belongs to my operation." The floor tilted. "You unraveled 18 months of layered financial structuring." Marcus continued, watching her face. "My best people spent half a year building that architecture. You took it apart in 4 weeks. It was assigned to me. Nora managed. It was a routine review. I didn't report it anywhere. I only filed the internal preliminary flag. Nothing external. I swear, I know," he said. His hand moved. She flinched, but his fingers only came to rest against the side of her jaw, tilting her face upward. His touch was careful, terrifyingly careful. "I came here tonight for 2 reasons," Marcus said. The man in that chair has been misappropriating port access for 3 competing syndicates for 14 months, which is a problem I'm resolving. And after that, I intended to find the analyst at Hargrove and Wolf who cracked my books and neutralize the threat. Nora's eyes stung. I didn't know. She whispered, I was just doing my job. I know that too. Marcus said softly. He stepped back. Just barely. His gaze moving over her face with an expression she couldn't categorize. The problem, Ms. Callahan, is that I've spent the last week reading everything about you. Your work, your methods, the precision of your audit trail, and I find that now that you're standing in front of me, he paused. Something shifting in his features. I'm facing a problem I didn't anticipate. He held out his hand. Come with me. There's something you need to see. She sat on the edge of a long slate-gray sofa in the 41st floor penthouse of a building whose name she recognized from Seattle's Architectural Digest. Her heels off. Her feet on the cold hardwood floor. Her hands wrapped around a glass of water she hadn't drunk. Marcus Vane stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Jacket back on. His posture relaxed in the way that powerful men are relaxed, not because nothing threatened them, but because nothing threatened them enough to show. He set a thin manila envelope on the cushion beside her. Open it, he said. Inside were printed emails. Internal. Hargrove and Wolf letterhead. On several. To a private account on others. Nora scanned the first one and felt the blood drain from her face by the third line. The email was from her supervisor, Jonathan Reeves, to a man identified only as F. Connolly. The date was 6 weeks ago, 2 weeks before Meridian Coastal Partners had been assigned to her. The message was meticulous, friendly, and entirely damning. I've assigned the Meridian audit to our top analyst, Callahan. She's thorough to a fault, and completely unaware of the broader picture. She'll find the discrepancy within the month, when Vane moves to silence her. The federal exposure will create the exact pressure point we need. The port contracts go to your consortium by Q1. Nora read it 3 times. Then she set the paper down on her knee very carefully. The way you set something down when your hands are shaking and you don't want anyone to know. Jonathan Reeves had hired her out of graduate school, had written her recommendation letters, had attended her professional certification ceremony, and shaken her hand and said, Hargrove is lucky to have you. Nora. He had deliberately handed her a death sentence and smiled while doing it. Connolly runs the Harrington Group, Marcus said from across the room, his voice measured and without performance. A consortium trying to collapse my operations and seize our port infrastructure. They couldn't come at me directly. They needed a federal trigger, a civilian casualty that would force an investigation. They chose you because you were exactly the kind of analyst who would find what they needed you to find. And because they believed that I would handle the problem the way I always handle problems. They wanted you to kill me, Nora said. She was surprised by how flat her voice sounded. Yes, and you're not going to. Marcus crossed the room slowly and crouched in front of her. Eye level. His forearms resting on his knees. This close. She could see the exact shade of his eyes, not black as she'd thought, but a very deep brown, like the bottom of something. No, he said. I'm not. Why? He was quiet for a moment. His gaze moved over her face, not assessing, not calculating. Something else. Something that made her want to look away and find she couldn't. Because the woman who cracked my ledgers in 4 weeks, Marcus said, is not a liability. She's an asset I've never encountered before." He paused. "And because the woman sitting in front of me right now is not someone I want to remove from the world." Nora stared at him. She thought of Bradley Fitch and his pharmaceutical sales confidence and his body composition commentary and the look his eyes had made when they registered what she ordered for dinner. She thought of 6 years of 60-hour weeks at Hargrove and Wolfe, of staying late and arriving early, and doing the work so thoroughly and carefully that Jonathan Reeves could use her as a precision instrument to end her own life. She picked up the folder. She read it again. "Tell me about Connolly's financials," she said. Marcus's private office occupied an entire corner of the penthouse, 2 facing walls of glass, a desk the size of a small aircraft carrier, and 3 monitors running what appeared to be a live commercial shipping dashboard. Nora sat behind the desk at 11:47 at night. Her trousers replaced by a pair of sweatpants someone had wordlessly provided. Her hair pulled back, her fingers moving across the keyboard with a velocity that surprised even her. Marcus leaned against the far edge of the desk. Watching her, he had removed his vest. He held a mug of black tea, not coffee. Tea, which she found unexpectedly interesting, and had said almost nothing for 90 minutes, except to answer her direct questions about organizational structures and server access. Connolly uses a tiered LLC structure, Nora said, pulling up a document tree on the center monitor. Standard obfuscation, 3 layers of holding companies, all registered in Delaware. 1 in the Caymans. His real liquid assets are pooled in an investment vehicle called Aldgate Capital. She typed quickly. Navigating through a compliance database she still technically had access to through Hargrove, except she leaned forward the beneficial ownership disclosure he filed. Last March lists a managing partner named Thomas Reeves. She looked up. Jonathan Reeves's brother. She said, "Your adversary and my boss are not just working together. They're family." Something moved through Marcus's expression, sharp and cold. "I need remote access to Aldgate's transaction records," Nora said. "And I need a VPN running through a clean server. And I need more tea. I think this is going to take a while." Marcus was already moving. By 3:15 in the morning, Nora had rebuilt the entire financial architecture of the Harrington Group from the outside in, using publicly filed documents, leaked compliance data she'd uncovered through a legal research portal, and the specific, encyclopedic knowledge she had of how Jonathan Reeves structured quarterly reporting. By 4:40, she had identified the mechanism. They're running a cash flow laundering scheme through port maintenance contracts, she said, turning to Marcus, who had not moved from his position at the edge of the desk in hours, watching her work with an expression she could only describe as reverent. "Every time your operation processes a shipment, there's a tithe, a percentage skimmed through a fake maintenance invoice paid to a company called Pacific Grounds LLC, which doesn't exist. Pacific Grounds deposits to Aldgate. Aldgate funds the Harrington Group's expansion. They've been taking from me for 2 years," Marcus said quietly. 26 months. Nora corrected. "About $4.3 million. She turned back to the screen. "I can reverse this," she said. "I can document the full chain of transactions with timestamp verification, create a compliance report, formatted for federal submission, and route the evidentiary package directly to the SEC's whistleblower portal with an anonymous filing." She paused. "And separately, because I want to do this separately, I can send Jonathan Reeves's personal email to every journalist on the Pacific Northwest business desk, with a full breakdown of his role in setting me up. She glanced back at Marcus. That one's for me. What about Bradley Fitch? Marcus asked. Nora blinked. What? Your blind date? The pharmaceutical director. Something in Marcus's expression shifted minimal. Controlled. But present. Priyachen. She referred you to him. I had your background reviewed before tonight. It was thorough. Nora stared at him for a moment. Bradley Fitch is just a man who made me feel bad about ordering pasta. He doesn't rise to the level of financial intervention. No. Marcus agreed. I simply wanted to know his name. Something in his voice made Nora close the document she'd been working on and turn fully in the chair. Why? Marcus set down his mug. He walked around the desk slowly, stopping beside the chair close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him, because in 4 hours, he said, you have systematically dismantled the financial infrastructure of an organization that spent over 2 years trying to destroy mine. And before that, a man who didn't deserve to share a table with you spent 90 minutes making you feel like an inconvenience. He paused. I find that I have a specific response to people who underestimate you. Nora's heartbeat moved somewhere it wasn't supposed to. I ruined my life tonight. She said. The weight of it was finally settling. Now that the adrenaline of the work was receding, I can't go back to Hargrove. Jonathan will know immediately that this came from me. I can't go back to my apartment if Connolly moves first. You're not going back to your apartment, Marcus said. His hand came to rest on the armrest of the chair, not restraining. Present. You're not going back to Hargrove and Wolf. He continued, his voice low and deliberate. You're not going back to 60-hour weeks building someone else's empire while they plan ways to spend you. The work you did tonight in 4 hours is worth more to my operation than everything Jonathan Reeves took in 2 years. He looked at her with his dark, careful eyes. Work for me. Run my finances. Build something that can't be cracked because you're the one who built it. You're asking me to stay, Nora said slowly, in the penthouse of a man who, 6 hours ago, had guns pointed at me. Yes, Marcus said, though the guns were precautionary. That's a remarkably low bar. I'm setting a higher one now. Nora looked at him for a long moment. She thought about Hargrove and Wolf, and the letter of recommendation and the birthday cakes, Jonathan's assistant ordered every year, and the way she'd believed, genuinely believed, that working harder and being better was enough to protect her from the world. She thought about the way Marcus Vane had looked at her when she walked through the wrong door, not with calculation, not with the weary tolerance of a man adjusting his expectations, but with the specific attention of someone encountering something that mattered. I need a proper workstation, she said. Not this one. A clean build. No existing network connections. And I want final say on all financial compliance structures. No exception. And I want something that isn't tea. Do you have coffee? Marcus looked at her for one suspended moment. Then something in his face broke open. Just slightly. Not a smile, exactly. But the precursor to one. The structural change that happens before the expression forms. Whatever you need, he said. 3 days later, the SEC received an anonymously filed whistleblower report documenting the full 26-month skimming operation run through Pacific Grounds LLC and Aldgate Capital, with complete transactional evidence and timestamp verification the same morning. 17 Pacific Northwest business journalists received a detailed documented account of how senior partner Jonathan Reeves of Hargrove and Wolf had deliberately assigned a junior analyst to an audit designed to trigger her death. in cooperation with his brother Thomas Reeves of the Harrington Group. By noon, Jonathan Reeves had been placed on administrative leave. By 4 o'clock, federal investigators had executed a search warrant on Harrington Group's offices. Bradley Fitch, whose cryptocurrency portfolio management work had incidentally routed several Harrington Group transactions through a personal advisory account. I found his assets frozen, pending investigation on the same afternoon. Nora heard about this last detail from Marcus, who mentioned it in passing while reviewing the morning briefing at the long kitchen table of the penthouse with the same even tone he used to discuss everything. She looked at him over the rim of her coffee mug. "That was you," she said. "You provided the documentation," Marcus said, without looking up from his tablet. "Marcus." He looked up. "Thank you," she said. Something settled in his expression, not softening. Exactly. More like arriving. Like something that had been traveling a long distance, finally reaching the place it was moving toward. "You walked through the wrong door," he said. "And you were the best thing that has ever walked into any room I've been in." Nora set down her coffee. The city spread out behind him, through 41 floors of glass. Wet, with early October rain. The kind of morning that made Seattle look like a painting. She had come to Orem, wanting one decent conversation. She was starting to think she might have found something that lasted considerably longer,